Thank you everyone for joining us. We are going to go ahead and hear from Senator Bryant first, but I want to let you know we will be taking questions at the end. So if anyone does have questions, we'll be reading them off. So if you could text them to me at 630-303-3611, and we will do that at the end. So now I'm going to pass it off to Senator Bryant to get us started.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm State Senator Terry Bryant. I'm the Senate Assistant Minority Leader. I represent the 58th Senate District, and I'm happy to be here with you. I also serve as the Senate Behavioral and as the Minority Spokesperson for Behavioral and Mental Health Committee. For the past 9 years, while I've been serving, actively talking to all of you, to anybody who would listen about the need for our state to do more when it comes to taking care of our developmentally disabled community. I've been a pretty loud voice in that. So it's our state's duty, of course, to ensure that all of the facilities that serve the vulnerable community provide the best possible care, whether that facility is an IDHS facility, which is a state-run facility, or an IDPH approved privately owned community-based facility. Everyone on this Zoom call today understands this and wants nothing more to ensure that our state lives up to that duty. The sad reality is that this administration has failed in that duty. Time and time again, we've seen this administration fail to fully prioritize our developmentally disabled community, all the way from failing to fully meet the Guidehouse rate study funding. Those recommendations were met in an inadequate way. And so addressing the issues of our state facilities is no different than that. The vulnerable populations are consistently left behind. When it came to the lingering issues at Choate Mental Health and Developmental Center, the administration chose to take the easy way out and announced that they would be moving residents to other facilities throughout the state instead of doing the hard and necessary work required to fix the problems. They told the residents that they would be moving whether or not they wanted to leave the facility, and despite the fact that our courts have ruled that members of the developmentally disabled or the DD community have the right to choose if they want to live in a state-run facility or in a CILA. In fact, there are multiple residents who have made it very clear at Choate they will not leave, and their guardians or their parents have made it clear they want them to be the last ones taken out of that facility. Those individuals often have already tried CILAs, and even though they've tried the community-based facilities in the past, they personally, as well as their guardian or parents, don't believe that their needs are being met in community-based programs. After learning about the latest ProPublica report about the inexcusable reports of abuse that have also unfortunately occurred within the state's other facilities, I'm extremely nervous to see what this administration's response will be. Will they once again choose to take the easy way out and announce even more facility closures instead of committing to the work needed to address the problems? Or will they force the residents of the facilities to leave their homes against their will for CILAs? These individuals who already have their own history of abuse and neglect, as well as those facilities having that history. We have to have legislative hearings to get these answers. We've asked for them in the past. We've even gone so far as demanding them in the past, but it just has not happened. So we need this administration to go on the public record. We need them to answer questions about the abuse investigations, how they were handled, and what they're doing to stop them from happening again. We need them to tell the public on the record what they're doing to ensure our developmentally disabled community receives the best possible care, which they rightfully not only deserve, but are entitled to. Thank you for listening. And at this time, I'm going to turn this over to Representative Charlie Meyer.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Meyer. I serve as Assistant Republican Leader and State Representative. I represent the 109th District, which includes portions of Bond, Clinton, Madison, St. Clair, and Washington counties. This has been my battle since 2012. I am here today to share my continued frustration and disappointment with DHS and its chronic failure to keep our most vulnerable residents with developmental disabilities safe in the majority of state-operated developmental centers throughout Illinois. Unfortunately, the abuse and neglect that is happening does not stop there. It's been happening in our Scylla group homes as well. We are talking about people with severe disabilities that either can't communicate, can't bathe themselves, or can't feed themselves. These most vulnerable residents living in the developmental centers throughout our state can't protect themselves, and I'm very sad to learn that more reports that our most vulnerable residents under state care are being punched, slapped, hosed down, thrown about, and dragged, in some cases left to die. We are also talking about disabled individuals who have severe behavior issues, whose needs cannot be met in small community settings. I want to talk to you about a pair of twins for a minute. Nonverbal, living in a Scylla. Their only issue was why they were on hospice. They were not fed. Thankfully, somebody finally, late on a Saturday, moved them out at midnight and got them somewhere where they could be fed. They were on hospice to die. They're thriving now. I'm going to tell you about somebody I'll call John. He's living at Murray now. After coming there, he wanted to know if he did something wrong, if he would be locked outside barefoot in the snow, or what his punishments were going to be, because that's what happened in the Scyllas to him. After being there a while, several years, he finally opened up and he said, I wonder what happened to that one worker. I hope somebody did something to him because he raped me. That's what happened in the Scylla. So it's happening to our developmentally disabled across the state in DHS care. We have to do something about it. We filed many bills over the years and legislation, and most of them are never heard in committee even. In March of 2017, the Illinois House of Representatives approved my legislation, House Resolution 34, directing the Auditor General to conduct a performance audit of the community integrated living arrangements, CILLA's program administered by the Illinois Department of Human Services. This resolution was introduced in light of the abuse, neglect, which took place throughout the state in group homes and developmentally disabled centers dating back to 2011. We've had 3 audits from the Auditor General that I have pushed to get done. The 4th one is being done now. These audits showed when the state went in closing Jacksonville that these residents were basically sold like cattle on an auction, with their disabilities being held up and being misrepresented. Providers could bid on them and take them to their homes. They showed that DHS back then put an ad on Craigslist that you could supplement your family's income by taking a family member, by taking a resident home and taking care of them. When the 3rd audit was released in September of 2022, the Auditor General confirmed the state does not regularly follow up on the suspected criminal activity of Medicaid providers in the state, which includes group homes, otherwise known as CILLAs for the developmentally disabled. As of last September, 74% of the audit recommendations for ADHS were not fully implemented. There is another audit being done right now. I said last fall, and I will say it again. This is beyond disappointing. It is as if the people in power don't care about the safety of our developmentally disabled persons. My colleagues and I haven't stopped advocating for the safety and well-being of our most vulnerable, and we won't stop until they are safe. At the beginning of this year's legislative session in February, my Republican colleagues in the House and Senate called for public hearings to discuss the serious concerns regarding the disturbing reports of neglect and abuse of residents at Choate Mental Health Developmental Center in Southern Illinois, but our requests were not met by the Democratic majority. We provided lawmakers and DHS with several proposals to help stop the abuse and neglect that showed in our legislation, and most of the ideas were ignored. The same plan can be put in place in all developmental centers. Our plan introduced earlier this year is called the Help Protect and Improve Our Home Plan for developmentally disabled centers, and includes House Bills 1298, House Bill 2998, House Bill 3545, among other suggested improvements to be made by DHS. Install cameras in common areas, implement ongoing staff training, amass hiring the qualified staff to help. We've had a job fair, we had 111 people show up. They only hire 3 at a time. This all goes through CMS. There are major problems. Many people who are wanting that job will wait 6 months before it's finally offered to them, and they have a job somewhere else. We need jobs now. We should be able to hire within less than a month. We need to track these incidents by locations and trends. We need to increase the administrative and security inspections. We need to remind our employees that they see something, they have to report it. We have to encourage and welcome parents and guardians to be there with their loved ones, to watch over them. We can't have them locked out where they're not seeing what's going on. When family members aren't there, more abuse can happen. We need new leadership and directors. When you have a facility that has everything going on as in Choate, and the director is still there, I think that's a problem. We've gone on record asking for a new director there, and we believe this should happen. And we have to speed up the reevaluation of the inspector general coming in and inspecting. We can't be paying employees for 13 months that aren't working because their case hasn't been heard. A lot of these are unsubstantiated, but we need to move this process on. They need to start within a month. This plan is an urgent step to put a stop to the abuse and neglect that is now being reported at Kiley, Ludeman, Mabley, Shapiro developmental centers. The Help Protect Us and Improve Our Home proposal is a realistic plan to make the improvements needed as the majority of our state developmental centers, a place residents call their home. I am more than willing to work with DHS and the elected officials to help foster a safe, loving, and healthy home where our most vulnerable can happily live, fulfilling their lives. I encourage our representatives from the other side of the aisle to come and visit. Several of them have. I'm very pleased. We're always happy to give tours. And I hope our reporters come and walk through our facilities and see them and talk to the family members there and meet our residents. They are very special, loving, kind people. I would now like to turn this over to my colleague, Representative Dave Severin.
Thank you, Representative Meyer and Senator Bryant. I appreciate that. Good afternoon. I'm State Representative Dave Severin of the 116th District. I represent 9 counties in South Central and Southeastern Illinois. I currently serve as a member of the House Mental Health and Addiction Committee. Growing up, my family ran Severin Nursing Home in Benton. It was started out as a shelter care home when I was a little boy, and then we went to became a intermediate care ICF-DD facility. So we had residents that were DD population, around 65 residents that actually I worked with in high school. I worked directly with them. In fact, I shaved several of the residents before I went to school in the morning. And then I worked as an activity director, as a social service director in the nursing home. So I worked very closely with many of the residents. In fact, they became not only residents, but friends and family. I learned how to play the drums by one of the residents actually gave me lessons, and that's how I learned how to play the drums. My mother and father instilled a love for those less fortunate and those that are in need of health and quality of life services. We took it very seriously, and the residents that we served and their families trusted us, and they deserved the very best that we could give them. Unfortunately, for residents living in facilities that serve the developmentally disabled community in Illinois, we have seen news reports in the last year that have shocked and disgusted me. And before I go any further, I just want to interject this. So I want to say this about the staff at Choate that are doing a fantastic job. There are many there that have been working there for several years, some of them decades, that they take their job very seriously. They're doing a great job, and they're concerned about what's going on there also. So I don't want everyone to think that this is the whole facility as far as all of the staff. There are pockets of major concern that we're wanting to bring to attention today. But I want to say thank you to those staff that are there, some of them new staff, some of them very experienced, been there, some of them for decades, that are doing a fantastic job. So I want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you that are doing a good job. Thank you that have stepped forward and shared your concerns also. So after the ProPublica issued a sweeping story regarding abuse of residents living at Schoten Mental Health and Developmental Center back in February of this year, I joined my colleagues for a Capitol News conference to call for joint committee hearings of the House and Senate Human Services and Human Services Appropriation Committee, along with the House Mental Health and Addiction Committee and the Senate's Behavioral and Mental Health Committee. Our goal in calling for that committee's hearing was to get administration officials, let me say that again, administration officials, DHS officials, and relevant staff members that showed on the record to answer questions about the failure that lead to the outrageous reports of abuse, neglect, sexual assault, and outright torture of residents living in the care of the state. Throughout the session, House and Senate Republicans continued our calls for hearings. Unfortunately, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle completely ignored our demands. Their refusal to participate in an on-the-record hearing to get our questions answered was very disappointing, but considering how politics goes in Illinois, I wasn't surprised. However, after yesterday's news report by ProPublica that detailed horrible cases of abuse at other developmentally disabled state-run facilities, House and Senate Democrats and the officials at the Department of Human Services and the governor's staff must be held accountable for these failures. Our goal today is to call attention to the heinous and inexcusable abuses of these vulnerable citizens of Illinois. Again, citizens of Illinois, and to reiterate our call for a joint committee meeting of the House and Senate Human Services and Human Services Appropriation Committee, along with the House Mental Health and Addiction Committee. So you see that this includes several people in the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, and the Senate Behavioral Mental Health Committee. So several people involved. We're demanding that a joint hearing be convened at the earliest possible time. Earliest possible doesn't mean 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 years. We're talking about ASAP. And in the private sector, ASAP means now. So we're demanding that joint hearing to be convened now so that we can get our questions and answered on the record for the media and the public to see and hear. In addition to our demand for an in-person, public, transparent, and full joint committee hearing, we're also requesting the presence of any deputy governor or high-ranking member of the Pritzker administration that is charged with overseeing the Department of Human Services, the presence of Illinois Department of Human Services Director Grace B. Howe, and the presence of all the appropriate and relevant high-level staff members of all state-run facilities that serve the developmentally disabled citizens of Illinois. That was a mouthful, but so there's a lot of people that should be involved in these decisions and this being addressed. So we must delay no longer. The families of the victims of these abuses, the taxpayers of the state of Illinois that provide the funding for the operation of these facilities deserve answers, and we deserve answers now. So again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to bring this important issue to the forefront. I appreciate Senator Bryant. I appreciate Representative Meyer and all of you that are here today.